Hello, everybody. Catchy1383 with Catchy Gaming, and I decided to just treat the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as more of as a journal sort of thing as I go through it, because summing this whole entire thing up in a review probably would just be exceptionally difficult. Not to mention, I don't know if I could give it justice. And it's going to be split up into multiple parts anyways due to the sheer length and size of this game. I mean, I already had to do that with Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be playing this for longer than that. So that's what I'm going to try and do, see where that goes. The last time I left off, I was talking about basically up to the Junon region. Part of it is. I pretty much had the large overworld done at that point in time. And I'm not going to lie, I am kind of disappointed that they didn't stick with the story in regards to the reactor with the phoenix nest on top of it, fending off the Shinra troops. Instead, we get stuck with the board game with the same name of Fort Condor. And it's rather similar to that of the Fort Condor game in the integrated DLC. Not quite. I have my rant about that, and I might get into a little bit more detail later. But for now, let's just say I don't particularly find this sort of mini game appealing. Which leads me to the town slash major city in this region, Junon, which I guess was the capital of the Republic before Shinra stomped it into the ground in a war they had. I don't really remember them covering that in the PlayStation version of the game. I don't know. I played it a couple of times. Maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I played it. I don't remember all that much, to be honest, in terms of dialogue or any history like that. But I guess that's what's happened to the region overall, and you can see the ruins from said war everywhere. So unfortunately, I didn't record a lot of material from this, or I deleted it. I'm not entirely sure which, but I did all the activities in the town, which there weren't many. It was just basically some Queen's Blood stuff and running an errand for the mayor, taking a dog to see her son. Mainly because the son has a kid on the way and she's giving him money. But this part is more or less towards when you first initially arrive and they introduce Yuffie. Instead of doing what they did in the original Final Fantasy game where you just found her in a forest and you beat her and she joined you, she gets attacked while on a boat, which doesn't make sense because she's always getting motion sick. But the mayor tells Cloud to start doing compressions, which if I was her, I'd be like, the guy wields a sword that's almost as tall, if not taller than him. He's probably just going to absolutely shatter her sternum, probably push right through the bone into her spine if he did compressions. Maybe not the best choice in this situation. And then Yuffie shows that she's super annoying at that. I have a friend who didn't like her, and he's like, how do you make her more annoying? I'm like, give her a voice actor. And that's exactly what they did. This particular iteration of Yuffie is just the worst. Voice acting's fine, don't get me wrong on that. I just find her super annoying, and I wish she would shut up. But for whatever reason, Square Enix likes this particular character. I mean, they gave her own DLC, and she's somewhat featured in the Final Fantasy Dirge of Cerberus game. Somewhat. I haven't played through all of it. So, one of the things I will admit in terms of recording some of the footage, I'm really, really bad at trying to determine what I should or shouldn't record. And since this game is supposed to be 200 hours plus, I just can't record all 200 hours. That's just impractical. I mean, I suppose I could. I could put it onto a couple of hard drives. I have plenty to spare for that reason alone. It's just I don't want to have to go through 200 plus hours of footage to find something I'm looking for. So my recording is very spotty in terms of events and gameplay that I missed. Anyways, after this point, I go back to the inn in this town, and I'll say this is actually one of the nicer inns in the whole entire game that I've seen so far as it comes to going into it, at least. And one thing in particular that keeps rearing its ugly head is if Red 13 is a cat or a dog, at least in my head, They keep calling him a dog, but he doesn't look like a dog or act like a dog. Meaning he's anthropomorphic in nature. His appearance is distinctly feline, and a wiki has described him as that of a lion, and his creator, Nomura, states in translation, I'm reading this for quotes, I'll post the article and I'll put a link there. But I guess since Red 13 is a feline of sorts, it would actually be a cat riding on a cat in this case. So at one point, they had an idea of Kate Sith riding on top of Red 13, which they sort of made come true in the Final Fantasy Advent Children film. I think they ended up retconning that in a different version where he rode his fat Moogle instead of riding Red 13, which I think it was better when he rode Red 13, but that's just my opinion. So, getting back to the part where I'm bad at recording footage, I did not record the part where Cloud rode a dolphin by running into balloons to make the dolphin go faster so it would jump up into the air and send him up to a control deck of a machine used to raise and lower ships in order to get into Junon proper. And unfortunately, I don't have any footage where they just go through a whole entire military facility with no disguises on whatsoever in sight of a ton of soldiers, and they have wanted posters out for these people, and no one seems to recognize them. Like, at all. And it felt like they should have grabbed the disguises right off the bat, but they didn't. And I also didn't get any footage of Cloud going around and gathering all the 7th troops in order to form the drill team. Now, for those who are watching, you're probably having nightmare flashbacks to the Honeybee, where you had to do something extremely similar, but this time they're like, what's up the ante a little bit, along with some of the button presses. Because, messing with people's brains by suddenly shifting the camera wasn't bad enough. I mean, the depth perception's better, probably because there's more light, but still. Like, I just wish the camera would just hold still. I mean, it drives me up the damn wall how much this thing shifted around and caused me to miss inputs because it just sudden jagged shifts. Through pure repetition alone, I was able to get used to it and finally get a satisfactory button push in order to get the achievement associated with all these button pushes. And part of that is increasing the difficulty on myself as well, which meant finding all of the squads for the 7th Squadron. I mean, that part was actually kind of amusing. You got to see a little bit of the Junon shops and stuff like that. And they have a model for the big, huge gun out there, and people are like, yeah, I want one of those, as in the toy model. And they had this big, huge, giant sort of, I think it was actually legitimately supposed to be bought, at least in terms of in-game. But they had little smaller versions too. And the one scene, oh, I wish I was recording, and I wish I had a save for that point, but I ran out of save spaces, and I ended up overwriting it. But they go into a bar where everyone's bald, and they're singing, I guess, a sea shanty? And Reno's there? Or is it Rude? I don't remember. And they all look at him, and they, like, tilt their heads and wheat with their hands across. And even the women are bald, by the way, and they won't serve them unless they're bald, but the whole entire thing was just bizarre, and it's sort of like a prelude to what's coming up, to be honest. Well, now that I'm done with that tangent, back to the whole entire drill team sort of button pushing that you do in order to get the achievement / get through the game. I don't know if there's a way to skip it. Maybe, I don't know. But I tried out for the drill team when I was in high school. I'm actually kind of glad I didn't, because those rifles cut the hell out of my hands. I used to, remove chunks of skin, and I had to bandage my hands up from practicing in order just to try out. Not a fun or easy thing to do, especially with a big, huge, heavy World War II rifle with an iron rod shoved down its barrel. And I know I already mentioned this, that it's very reminiscent of the Honeybee, but they make you do 3 sets of these things. 3. It's like, God damn. How cruel are you? And admittedly, I was trying to go for a perfect rating, and I finally got to a point where I just got tired of having to do all that footage and messing up, that I said good enough, and turns out it was. So after I did all of that, and I get to the cutscene where Rufus Shinra is almost assassinated by Yuffie, you get this whole entire ordeal where a bunch of Shinra troops follow Cloud around and you fight other Shinra troops. And I'm like, oh my god, he's just rolling with it. They're killing each other, setting these people up to be tried for treason. And I'm doing my best to keep these guys from being killed too, because it just felt bad and messed up to trick these guys, sort of trick these guys into fighting against their fellow soldiers. Yeah, they're Shinra, and it's not like it's a whole entire Star Wars faceless guy under a mask sort of thing. Technically, they do have masks, but that's besides the point. Like, it's actually some parallels into that, in that there's very few opportunities, and one of them is to be a soldier for Shinra. And here you are leading them against other Shinra troops, and they've shown to be pretty merciless in terms of punishment. And it's just like, these guys are gonna die regardless. And granted, we never see it, and I don't know if that actually ever happens, but I mean, they made it obvious that they knew that Cloud was there, so who knows what happened. I mean, we might see it later down the road, like when you get the high wind or something. I don't know. So after finally ditching the troops and removing them from harm's way, you get to the ship that takes you to Costa del Sol. And they skip the whole entire part where Red 13 is in a uniform. I say that tentatively. Don't worry, I'll get to that for those who are in the know. And they keep remarking him as a dog, but he still looks like a cat to me. And I'm not sure if it's like some kind of running joke or if he's supposed to be a dog. I'm still not sure, even after reading that article. But what does happen is a Queen's Blood tournament on the ship. And you can opt out of it. I didn't. I went through all of the matches with the various people that I could go up against. And you see some reoccurring characters from the remake, like Andrea from the Honeybee. I can't remember the name of the character, but the massage parlor lady, she's there too. I don't care for the Queen's Blood stuff all that much. It feels like the AI kind of cheats, like it magically gets the cards it needs in order to win sometimes. Like, it'll pull something out of thin air and you will just suddenly be stomped into the ground when you were winning, but now you're not. And part of it is, since you go first every time, you're usually at a huge disadvantage. And I mean by that, like, say you go for that middle square there to set it up for your third turn. Well, on its second turn, it can easily turn that move that you just did into absolutely nothing. Like, it doesn't count that you just did it, because they can flip it to a part of the board where they can play their own card. And to be honest, I've only sort of half-heartedly going through the game and trying to get the rules just a little bit. The only time I've ever liked a card game in Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy VIII. And I shouldn't say really like, I tolerated it. But I get through the whole entire tournament, and then the game starts to get weird. There's like signs of it being weird, which there's a fight and a conversation with a guy I kind of didn't record for. Like I said, I was just chatting with a friend while I played, so I didn't record anything because it was also picking up his audio. And he was murdering people horribly in Baldur's Gate 1 Enhanced Edition. So there's a lot of laughs and description of what's going on in that. But back to the weird part. So Red 13 was told he couldn't participate, and then they pull him out of a surprise sort of match against him. And this is the weird part. I mean, they acknowledged that Red 13 wearing a Shinra uniform would just be awkward, and then they did it, and I'm pretty sure they played it off as a joke. Yep, they just pulled that out of nowhere. So at this point, I was kind of confused about what happened to the battle in the hold of the ship. And they do go over that. After you go to sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night and you are attacked by monsters. I should say fiends, not so much as monsters. And you eventually get to the hold where all the robed men are being sort of grabbed by some fiends and being turned into stronger versions, or I guess a stronger fiend. And they eventually mass into this one lump after the captain shoots them all in the face. And that's the fight in the hold of the boat. And I forgot to mention the massive black men grab onto a arm. I don't think they really even pointed that out, but that's what they did, and that's what caused them to form into a big, huge mass. Anyways, I'm gonna cut it there. If you made it this far, thanks for watching.